This video outlines the key tools, parts and useful bits of information you need to swap out your old 3x8 drivetrain for a more up-to-date 1x10 system. 3x8 is still common on entry-level bikes such as my 2023 GT Aggressor, which featured a base-level Shimano Tourney drivetrain, which was starting to pay up for me. Shifting to a 1x10 improves the quality and reliability of the system as well as sheds a little weight. To remove the crank, we first remove the dust cap and then use a socket to remove the crank bolt. In the case of the GT Aggressor, or this version of GT Aggressor, it's a 14mm. This is the old Shimano Tourney crankset. To remove it from the bottom bracket, you will need a crank puller tool. This is a cheap generic crank puller tool from someone like Amazon. I think if you're an occasional bike tinkerer, something like this seems to work just fine. To use it, you simply wind the thread into the crank all the way as far as possible to avoid stripping the threads in the old crank, and then you, by applying a spanner onto this part, you're able to wind this down, and this then will push the old crank off the square taper. To get a decent chain line, in my case, I also had to change the bottom bracket. The standard GT Aggressor fit 122.5mm one was too wide, which meant I was receiving interference in the lower ranges. This is the old Aggressor bottom bracket. To remove it, you need to use a tool here. The teeth of these interface with the bottom bracket. Notably, on the drive side, you need to remove with a clockwise motion, and on the other side, you use the standard anti-clockwise to undo the bottom bracket. Widthwise, as I say, the old bottom bracket was 122.5mm. What I have gone for is a 118mm bottom bracket on the Aggressor, and I'm perfectly happy with that, although you might want to step down to 113mm if you want to get it even closer to the, in terms of chain line, to the lower gears. Having gone down to a single cog at the front, you can choose to remove the front derailleur. Some people say they like to leave it on as a chain guide. However, in my case, I thought I'd get rid of the weight, and I'm perfectly happy with that decision. You'll want to change the chain to a 10-speed chain anyway, but to remove this you will have to break the chain to thread it through this as it is riveted. To break the chain, you'll need a chain tool. This is another cheapy generic, but works perfectly fine. To use the chain tool, you align the chain between the teeth, and then by turning this, it effectively pushes the pin out through the other side. If you want to reuse the chain though, you have to make sure you don't push the pin all the way through. You want to stop it just on the last plate there, otherwise you won't be able to push it back in easily. When you rejoin, in my case I've gone with a KMC missing link, other brands are available, which makes rejoining and joining the chain easier in the future. On a narrow wide chain ring, the teeth are alternating narrow and wide to match the narrow wide gaps on the chain. This gives better chain retention. For the rear derailleur and cassette, the groupset I've opted for is the Microshift Advent X. This gets pretty good write-ups and appears on certainly more expensive bikes than a standard GT Aggressor. Once you've broken the chain, you can remove the old derailleur, in this case the old Tourney 8-speed. You'll need a 5mm to remove the attachment to the frame, And in the case of this one, the 5mm also works for the cable attachment. On the replacement Advent X, this one though is a 4mm. To swap out the old 8-speed cassette and fit the new 10-speed, you need a couple of tools. First up, a chain whip. The chain whip is used to hold the freewheel in place whilst you loosen the lock ring. Without the whip, it will just spin freely like this when you try to undo it. With the lock ring undone, you can simply slide off the old cassette and the new cassette will slide straight on to the free hub, which in this case is a Hyperglide type. So derailleur fitted, cranks on, the next job will be to fit the chain. So you will thread the chain through the derailleur before sizing it and joining it, ideally with the missing link. To size it, you put the chain on the largest cog, loop it around the chainring until touching, and then add 2 links. Of note, if you're joining the chain with a missing link, such as this, you need to leave 2 inner ends on the chain. Once you slot the missing link in place, you can set and lock the link through pressure on the pedals whilst stationary. Once the chain is on, the last job will be to route the shifter cable and set the indexing. In the case of the Advent X, Microshift provide an excellent and detailed installation guide, which I've linked in the description to talk through setup. So there we have it, one much improved drivetrain on the GT. I've also recently upgraded from the heavy cheap spring fork, so let me know in the comments if you would like to get, or if you would get value from a video about that. And as ever, if you found it useful, please hit like and subscribe. See you next time.